In today's video, I'm going to show you how I photograph a long exposure image using flowers as my foreground and using a 10-stop ND filter. Ollie, come! Ollie, come! Ollie! We gotta make a video! Ollie! Come here! Come on! Come on, honey! Come on, come on! I hear you! Come on! You coming? Up! Up, up, up! Oh, good boy! Hi, Annie! Hi! Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. This is Ollie and I'm Sarah from Sarah Lindsay Photography. So nice to see you guys again. I recently had the chance to photograph some daffodils over in Washington before the virus broke out. I was at a farm, I'm not quite sure what it's called, but I think they might have a tulip festival as well over there. I'll have to look into it a little more. Anyways, I wanted to give you a few tips when going to these farms festivals to photograph daffodils or tulips, because there's a couple things that will make your life a lot easier when you're there. First, make sure you have gumboots. These fields are incredibly muddy. I don't think I've ever been to one where there hasn't been mud everywhere. You will be covered from your knees down if you don't have gumboots. Secondly, make sure you arrive extra early. Flowers, especially in these mass quantities, are actually really messy and very challenging to find compositions in. So allow yourself that little bit of extra time to walk around and make sure you secure a composition that you're happy with. Be prepared for a ton of walking at these farms. We can't go into the rows of the flowers, so you are limited to just the edge, and the edges are usually not in that good of condition. The flowers have usually been stepped on because they are at the edge and that's where people are walking. So you're going to have to spend a lot of time just walking around these massive fields trying to find a good composition that you can photograph. So when I'm making these long exposure images, I'm photographing it in two parts. If I'm focus stacking, it's probably maybe more like 3 or 4 parts, but we'll just keep it to 2 to keep things simple. I photograph one image, which is the long exposure image for the sky, and then I photograph the flowers separately. Since you're doing a long exposure, you will not be able to get this in one shot. You have to do 2. It's pretty rare where there is no wind or any movement in the flowers when you're trying to do a long exposure image. If you just try to do this all at one time or all in one go, your flowers are going to be blurred and they're just going to look like a big hot mess. When you're photographing the flowers, you want to make sure that you have a fast shutter speed. Something like 1/250th of a second is ideal, but I have gotten away with something like 1/30th of a second. It all really depends on how windy it is at the time. With that being said, wind is probably the most challenging thing about photographing flowers. If it's not a windy day, then none of this really applies and your shooting conditions will be perfect, but if it's windy, it can definitely be challenging. I usually start photographing the flower part of the image first because there's usually more light at this time. Let's say if I went before sunset, it's generally a little bit more lighter. Therefore, I will be able to have faster shutter speeds. Worst case scenario, and don't be afraid to do this, is you might need to raise your ISO. It's fine if you need to raise your ISO. I think it's much better to get the shot and have a little bit of noise in it versus not having a shot at all, especially if you traveled and spent money to go and get this image. You're going to need to adjust your aperture as well in order to get faster shutter speeds. Play around, see what works, see what helps you get the fastest shutter speed to make sure that your flowers are sharp. Usually wind comes in gusts, so if you can wait it out and just wait for the wind to die down a bit, it's likely that you'll have a little window of opportunity where there's not really any wind and the flowers might sort of calm down. Take advantage of that and be ready to get your shots. Make sure you're set up ahead of time. After I have photographed the flower part, then I will start working on the sky. So for the sky, it's better if it's windy, and because then you're gonna get a lot more streaky clouds if that's the look that you like. So you want wind for the sky, but you don't want wind for the foreground. A tripod is absolutely essential in order to do this. If you don't have a tripod, then you're just gonna have to shoot everything handheld and you are not getting a long exposure image. Most of my long exposures are all shot at f11 or f16. If it's closer to the blue hour, just after sunset, then I will start shooting at f8 if I'm still doing long exposures. And for the sky, I'm also shooting at the lowest ISO possible because since you're on a tripod, your ISO doesn't matter, your shutter speed doesn't matter, it's going to be really long anyways. So you can have as low as ISO as you can go. Okay, cool. Now that you know how to do this and shoot it in the field, let's show you how to put it all together in Photoshop. Do you remember how I said it is pretty rare to not have some sort of wind moving the flowers? Well, this was one of those rare times. It was completely calm while I was shooting this that you can hardly tell the flowers have any movement in the long exposure image. Even though you can't really see the movement, it's still there if you look close enough. So it's a good idea to make sure you get a still shot of the foreground no matter how calm your shooting conditions are. The method I'm going to use to put this all together is a focus stack. Because of how close I was to the foreground, I must focus stack this image. Photoshop does a pretty good job of this, and it's a very quick way to combine the foreground with the long exposure sky. If you aren't focus stacking an image, there are many other ways to blend your exposures together, but we will just work on this method for this edit. Looks like you're getting some bonus editing instruction because you'll be learning how to focus stack as well. If you subscribe to mine and Ollie's channel, you'll get a little extra something each video. So what I have here is two images. This one right here being the long exposure sky, and then this one just being the shot for just the flowers. The long exposure sky was 50 seconds. It was shot at f16 and ISO 100. And for the foreground, it is 1/15 of a second and it's shot at f16, ISO 100. Normally, I would probably blend 3 images together, but just for showing you guys how this works, I'm just going to use the 2. And because it was so calm, the trees in the background and all the little flowers in the back don't seem to have moved at all. So focus stacking this is going to be really, really easy. So the first thing that you want to do is highlight both of your layers, and then you're going to come into Edit, come all the way down to Auto Align Layers. This step is really important to do first before you actually blend the layers together. So Auto Align Layers, this window will come up. So make sure Auto is select and hit OK. And then Photoshop will take its time to put these together. So they're both now aligned, and with them both selected, you want to come back to Edit, Auto Blend Layers right here. Make sure you have Stack Images selected and Seamless Tones and Colors selected and hit OK. And now Photoshop is going to do what it thinks is right and focus stack these images. It's usually a really quick process as well. All right, so it's done now. We are sharp from front to back. Every time you focus stack an image, there's always a little bit on the edge that kind of looks a little bit funny. This happens with every image. You'll have to remove that whichever way you think is best. Usually just by cropping it, we'll get rid of that. All right, so now we have our flowers, which are perfectly in focus and still and not moving, blended with the long exposure sky. So this ended up being the final edit of the image. At first, usually I bring my images into Lightroom and I do the very basic adjustments there, and then I bring them into Photoshop, and if I'm focus stacking, I focus stack there, and then I will continue the rest of my edit in Photoshop. So what I do like the best about this image is the yellow flowers against the blue sky. I love that color combo. It's bright, it's happy, it makes me smile, and I also love how I had 3 flowers in my composition, and I love having a little bit of the leaves here coming up and pulling you into the image. A couple of things that I don't like about this photo is that you can see the dirt right here this is actually right beside a row, so this is the row that would lead into there. And I also don't really like these trees here. I don't like how it's positioned. Obviously, I was shooting at 16, so it distorted the trees over here to the right, which is something just to be mindful of when you're out shooting, where the trees are in your frame. But I don't find it that it's too distracting. And another thing that I don't like about this image is I would probably spend a little bit of time cleaning up these leaves here. I just find that they have a few, I guess you could call them little rain stains on them. I'd probably spend some time cleaning up those edges a little bit. But most of all, what I really like about this image is the streaky sky, and this is why I love doing long exposures. Here is another image that I shot on the same day. This one is at sunset. The other one was at sunrise. I shot up a little higher for this one because I wanted to get the rows leading into the sunset. For the foreground, I shot it at 35 mil, and it was f11, 1/30th of a second at ISO 100. It was not windy at all, so that shutter speed was fine for these flowers. And the sky is 30 seconds at f16 and ISO 100. The clouds weren't really moving fast for the sky, so there's a tiny bit of movement you can see where it just sort of blurred out the clouds a bit. My favorite thing about this image is the rows of flowers leading into the sunset here, and then the clouds coming out on both sides. I find that it leads you in, and then you're also being led in from the sky. I also love the warmth of all the flowers, and then I love how it's all cool around the top of the sky, and then we have this little bit of warmth here in the middle. What I don't like about this image is that I wish I shot it up a little bit higher so you could see more separation in these rows over here. Since I don't really like that we can only see the separation in the rows just at the beginning here. I wish there was just a little bit more on the sides. And the only way I would have been able to do that is if I shot up a little bit higher. And just for fun, here is a self-portrait that I shot while I was at this daffodil farm. So this self-portrait is actually 3 images put together. If you remember, I was saying that we aren't supposed to go down the rows of flowers, so I am actually photoshopped into this image. I'm not going to show you all the other files. I'll probably save that for a day when I show you a complete edit, but I can kind of quickly explain what I was doing here. So you'll notice that the flowers and the sky look very similar to the last image that I just showed you. So what I did here was I photographed myself near the edge of the rows, and it was a little bit earlier in the day as well, so that's where I got all the nice backlighting and that you can see around my hair and around my dress, because the sunset here just wasn't strong enough to give off that much light and light up my hair, etc., and the dress. So what I did was I combined an image of myself from earlier in the day, and I made sure though that I had shot, like when I photographed myself at the edge of the rows, it looked very similar to this composition already, so it was really, really easy to put myself into this frame. I just moved myself up a little bit, I guess you could say. And the sky is a long exposure sky, so that was added in separate as well. So in total, this is 3 images put together. One for me, one for the row of flowers, and one for the sky. Ollie, how come you didn't want to be in the video very much today? Why are you shy today? Are you shy? Give me a kiss. Gimme. Ollie says, and I say, that we really hope you subscribe to our channel so you can keep watching all of our videos that we make, even though Ollie is so cute. Hey! Come back! Ollie, come on. Come on, man. Come on. Anyways, talk to you guys again soon. Bye. What are you doing? I don't understand. Why are you facing away? Honey. Bye.